Well, the modified internal rate of return, this isn't a rule I really like. It's not a rule that we're going to cover in any more detail than what I'm going to tell you right now. It's not any examples that you'll have to work out, nothing on the homework or the exams. You should know that there is a way to try to change the internal rate of return rule, modify it in a way so that it doesn't fail in the two cases that we just talked about. It's called the modified internal rate of return. There are a few different ways that you can create a modified internal rate of return. I think that they all sort of miss the point, which is that when the internal rate of return rules, it fails for a specific reason. And when we see that failure, we should go and look at the project in a different way and not just try to change the IRR so that it ignores all the differences and gives us the answer that we want or the answer that's easiest to understand. This means that these are projects that are unusual in some way, and we should want to understand how they're unusual and how we should move forward based on that. Now, the last rule we're going to talk about isn't so much a decision rule as it is a rule to choose among other decisions. So it's called the Profitability Index. And the Profitability Index measures what we call the benefit per unit cost. But really what it says is for every dollar that I invest, how many dollars of value do I create? Right? And so this is a ratio, and it's a measure of efficient investing. So the Profitability Index is very much like the net present value. It is the present value of the future cash flows divided by the initial cost. So where the net present value is the sum of the present values of the future cash flows minus the cost, Profitability Index, or PI, is the sum of the present values of the future cash flows divided by the cost. This gives us a ratio, and again, the ratio should be interpreted like this. Say we have a Profitability Index of 1.1. This implies that for every dollar of investment, we're creating 10 cents in value. $1.10 worth of present values of cash flows. And in cases where we have limited capital, meaning we don't have enough money to take a bunch of projects, or even all the good projects that we identify, Profitability Index can help us choose between those projects. Right? So it's often the case where a firm has more good projects than it has money to invest. Hopefully this is the case for the firm. This is the goal of every firm, to have more projects available than it can possibly take, because we don't have unlimited money. And so in that case, we might identify all these good projects using the NPV rule, IRR rule, payback rule, all that kind of stuff. The Profitability Index can help us choose which one of these is going to be the most efficient use of our money. And we can see how an example like this right here. Right? So we've got two projects, Project A and B. And Project A has an investment of $5. It has a present value of the future cash flows of $10. Present value of the future cash flows minus the investment gives us NPV, that's 5. And present value of the future cash flows divided by the investment gives the Profitability Index, which is 2. So this is a pretty good project. It basically says we're going to double our money. That's what a PI of 2 means. For every dollar I invest, I generate $2 in value, or $2 total, $1 to cover my investment, $1 in value. Project B, on the other hand, requires a much larger investment, $100. Present value of the future cash flows is $150, and that gives us an NPV of $50, which again, that's a great project. Profitability Index here is 1.5, so for every dollar I invest, I generate 50 cents in value. So the net present value rule favors the project that provides the largest absolute return, and that's Project B. But the PI reminds us that Project B also requires a much greater investment, and its return on that investment is not as efficient as Project A. So if we could invest in Project A, and say invest in Project A several times over, or we can invest in Project A and a series of other projects that also have good efficient returns, we could ultimately provide a higher present value to the firm than just taking Project B. On the other hand, if we have $100 and these are our only projects available, we should take Project B. If I can't take Project A, say take Project A 10 times over, in which case I would prefer that. And we work our example. We can see that the Profitability Index for this example indicates value, indicates that it's a generally efficient use of our firm's investment money. So how do we wrap this up? in practice, we're going to use as many decision or investment criteria as we can when we're making big decisions. That being said, for relatively small decisions, we probably aren't going to go through all the time, effort, and work that's required to do a true net present value or internal rate of return analysis. Remember that these are not short-term projects. They can be evaluating a big investment for a firm can be a very time-consuming process involving more than one person. And so if you have to spend more money putting your workers to work doing net present value, then you may just, then the project actually brings in, then payback may be worth it. Or perhaps you're just not comfortable at that level of math and finance, and then payback is an easy rule to use. So we're going to use different decision criteria. If we're going to solve for the net present value, we might as well do all the other ones anyway. And so then we're going to evaluate based on what the sort of total criterion say to do. The rest of the slides are just some summaries of the criteria. When we use it, what's beneficial about it, what's not beneficial about each of the different rules, and how they work. We'll work this big comprehensive example here so that we can put them all to use with all of these rules to use with a different problem. And again, the solutions are here. One of the things that we'll be doing in the Excel project is using what we're going to learn here and what we're going to learn in Chapter 10 to evaluate a project for ourselves. We're going to use it to estimate the cash flows, and we're going to learn how to estimate cash flows in Chapter 10, so we'll estimate cash flows for a project, and then we'll calculate the net present value and internal rate of return. We're going to do that in Excel, and I'll give you some examples using Excel when we go through Chapter 10, but here are the functions in Excel. For when you're there, you can come back and look at that later. And that's it for Chapter 9. Again, I'll put out another lecture covering Chapter 10 at the beginning of next week. I'll do my best to keep updated with all that stuff. Please let me know if you have any questions, email, Zoom. I'm here to help as much as I can. We're all going to figure this out together. So I hope you guys are staying safe, and we'll see you next week.